This is probably one of the hardest things you can do. We have a hand, and of course you can see just by the size of my finger how big the hand is. So what that means is that we're gonna have to work with small tools and create some details. Now, I don't want to like make this a perfect hand, and that is, I don't want to spend so much time on this hand that it takes away from everything else. But I do like to keep, you know, we have to move away from the claw style to human hands, and that means that you will have to spend some time. Now, usually for hands, I would spend like a few days just doing hands, but you know, I'm at the point that I want to be able to finish this and move on to the next. So I'm going to make it maybe just a little bit less detailed than what I'm used to. Grabbing some grogless clay and adding it. These sculptures are always very challenging. And of course, you're gonna have to move around, but the reference that I'm using works quite well. I do wish there was different vantage points. The good thing about a hand is that you have your own hand to model. Even with this sort of brush and bristle brushes, the grog gets in the way, but I essentially am using the grog for the foundation of the sculpture, and then I added grogless on top for the details or the skin. I like this tool. I bought this tool a long time ago, and it's basically like a dental tool, but it works out really well. It's got two sections to it. There's the flat, and then there's this little bit pointier section, and it works really well because if you do details, something like this just comes in handy. So if I want to build out this kind of knuckle, just kind of push it over, even by taking like a little bit of clay and just figuring out where it needs to be and just kind of drop it off. You have to kind of just determine if it's worth keep going with the sculpture or start a new one. And I've used grog clay for this. So when I started, I used the grog clay. I added it, I built it up. It was very good for building a foundation of the sculpture. But one of the things I found is that the surface, when you start to create a smooth surface, it tends to be a little bit harder to use, because if you're taking like a brush like this, especially the face where it's very sensitive and very, very difficult, especially at this size, you'll start to get the granules, the grog, and it starts to scratch the surface. And if you were to use your water bottle and you spray it, and you keep spraying it, what happens is that the clay is becoming eroded. And as it erodes, it leaves like these little white specks, which are fine, you know, because once you finish the sculpture, you fire it, you can pretty much stain it and paint it, and it's gonna hide all those little imperfections. But I find that it's a little bit difficult, but I think it's good as a foundational, and for doing poses that are standing up, don't require a lot of details. But I think in the future, I'll use the grog clay to build up the figures, and then I'll add a little bit, almost like a skin of the regular clay on top, and then you can start using that as the sculpture or the clay for the final details. So I think the only thing that I've really done, I'm probably going to just work on this a little bit more, but I'm pretty much done with it. I'm probably going to start a new sculpture soon. The only thing I've done is add the flower to the hair. It's a little bit more of a frou-frou sort of sculpture. I was thinking about building it in a different theme, and I'm usually more interested in that, but I think for now, I think it's fine. I think the back actually looks a little bit decent, and one of the things I tend to do is that I emphasize a lot of the details of the sculpture with the muscles, and in the muscles, in the back, even in her, I'm probably going to dilute this a little bit and kind of blend all the muscles a little bit better. But one of the things I found is that her back is very defined. You actually see the vertebrae, you see the two erector spinae on both sides, and of course you do see the scapula. But one of the things I tend to do is I just look at all the details and I start adding details. And also, it's interesting enough that even on her, even though she's not like very solidly built with muscle, you still have the indication of the trapezius on both sides too. So the trapezius starts right about here. It's actually like all along here, and it's a diamond shape, and you can see that diamond shape in her body, which is really interesting.